You know, it's funny. When you have a headache and
Yeah.
you take a pill like ibuprofen or something, there's this expectation of absolute precision.
Oh, yeah, like engineering.
Right. Exactly like engineering. The chemical enters your body, it targets the inflammation, and the headache just goes away. It's basically a biological sniper.
Mm-hmm. Singular focus.
Yeah, we like our medical solutions to be highly focused and predictable. But then you walk into a health food store today, or honestly, you just scroll through your social media feed and suddenly that sniper rifle is just thrown out the window.
Oh, totally. It's replaced by a biological shotgun.
Yes. We're looking at this wellness landscape that is completely saturated with this one plant that claims to fix, well, honestly, everything.
It's the absolute definition of muddy marketing waters. I mean, truly, you're talking about ashwagandha.
I am.
Yeah, it's marketed as a cure for chronic stress, a remedy for insomnia, an athletic performance enhancer, an immune booster.
Basically a miracle cure.
Hmm.
Scientifically, I think it's known as Withania somnifera, right?
Right, yeah. Withania somnifera.
But commercially, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in gummies, powders, pills, fancy teas.
Yeah.
And the claims are so broad that it automatically triggers my skepticism.
Which it should.
Yeah. It promises to fix your burnout, cure your sleeplessness, and somehow also make you bench press a small car.
Huh.
So the fundamental question we are answering for you on this deep dive today is whether this is just, the latest overhyped wellness fad, or if there is an actual scientifically validated powerhouse hiding beneath all that marketing.
And to get to that answer, we are completely bypassing the lifestyle blogs. We are not looking at influencers today.
Thank goodness.
Right. We were pulling exclusively from rigorous systematic reviews, massive dose-response meta-analyses spanning through 2025 and 2026, and incredibly detailed molecular pharmacology studies.
So we're really getting into the weeds.
Oh, absolutely. The goal here is to decode the biological reality of this plant for you. We are going to map out exactly what it is, the precise molecular mechanisms of how it alters your brain chemistry and your hormonal profile, the clinical evidence supporting it, and this is crucial, the very real, sometimes actually dangerous safety precautions you have to understand before you ingest it.
Yeah, that safety part is going to be a big one later. But before we can understand how it supposedly fixes modern burnout, we need to trace this back to the dirt. Like, where did this come from and what is it actually doing in the wild?
Well, botanically speaking, Withania somnifera is a small evergreen shrub, and it belongs to the Solanese family.
Hold on. The Solanaceae family. That's the nightshade family, right?
It is, yeah.
So we're talking about the same family tree as everyday things like tomatoes and potatoes, but also highly toxic plants like belladonna and jimsonweed.
That's right. It occupies a very interesting space in botanical taxonomy. It's native to the arid, brutally dry regions of India, the Middle East, Africa, and parts of Southern Europe.
So really hot, dry places.
Very hot. And its environment is actually the key to its entire pharmacological profile. This plant evolved to thrive in harsh, sun-baked, rocky soil where water is scarce and temperatures are extreme.
Which, I mean, that sounds like an incredibly hostile environment for a leafy shrub.
It is hostile, but in botany, environmental stress acts as a biological trigger.
Okay, how so?
Well, when a plant like ashwagandha is stressed by drought or intense UV radiation, it can't run away, right? It has to defend itself chemically.
Because it's literally rooted to the ground.
Exactly. So it does this by synthesizing massive amounts of what we call secondary metabolites.
And primary metabolites would be what?
Primary metabolites are just the compounds a plant uses for basic growth and reproduction, like making leaves and roots. Secondary metabolites are the chemical armor it creates to survive trauma.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and the fascinating part is that the specific chemical armor this plant synthesizes to survive the desert happens to be the exact same chemistry that exerts profound physiological effects when it's introduced into the human body.
So the plant's literal trauma response essentially becomes our stress relief.
That's incredible. When did the scientific community actually start, categorizing this?
In the Western taxonomic system, it was first described by the legendary botanist Carl Linnaeus in 1753.
Okay, so a while ago.
Yeah, quite a while. He originally categorized it as Physalis somnifera. The nomenclature shifted a bit over the decades. It was reclassified into the Withania genus by Pocky in 1825, and then that classification was really locked in by Dunal in 1852.
But I'm guessing the European debate over its name is just a tiny blip in its actual history.
Oh, a total blip. Long before Linnaeus was even born, it was a cornerstone of Ayurveda, which is the traditional medical system of India, for over 3,000 years.
Right. And the original Sanskrit name, Ashwagandha, is incredibly literal. It breaks down into two words, right? Ashwa, meaning horse, and gandha, meaning smell. So the smell of the horse.
Yeah, and it's an accurate name.
Having actually opened a jar of the raw, unprocessed root powder myself, I can confirm it smells exactly like a sweaty stallion. It is strong. The pungent odor is undeniable, for sure. But the ancient Ayurvedic texts used the name as a metaphor as well as a physical description.
Like, you smell like a horse, but you also get the strength of one.
Exactly. The texts assert that consuming the root imparts the strength, vitality, and stamina of a stallion. In the Ayurvedic framework, it's classified as a Rajyana.
Okay, let's translate Rajyana for anyone listening. What does that actually mean in a physiological sense?
Right, so a Rajyana is essentially a rejuvenator. It's a foundational tonic meant to balance the mind and body, expand longevity, and promote balya, which translates to physical and immune strength. And it also promotes medya, which refers to intellect and mental clarity. So it wasn't really used to treat one specific acute disease, like an infection. It was used to raise the body's overall threshold for disease.
Raising the baseline.
Yeah. And today, modern Western herbalism attempts to capture this concept with the term adaptogen.
Okay, I actually want to push back on the word adaptogen for a second because, honestly, it has been completely hijacked by marketing.
Oh, 100%.
Right. Everything from mushroom coffee to face cream claims to be an adaptogen now. It's lost all meaning. So for someone listening, the best way I can describe a true adaptogen is to compare it to a biological thermostat.
A thermostat. I like that.
Yeah, because it isn't a stimulant like your morning espresso, which just forces your nervous system into high gear whether you want it to or not.
Huh?
And it isn't a depressant like alcohol, which just forces it to slow down. An adaptogen just reads the room.
It adjusts.
Right. If your stress is running too hot, it cools it down. If your energy is freezing cold, it warms it up. It essentially restores baseline. Does the science back that up?
The clinical definition actually aligns perfectly with that thermostat concept. Scientifically, an adaptogen has to be a non-toxic substance that non-specifically increases the human body's resilience to external stressors.
Non-specifically meaning it handles all kinds of stress.
Exactly. Whether that stress is a biological pathogen, a physical stressor like extreme cold or heavy exercise, or a chemical stressor, it essentially forces the body back into systemic homeostasis.
But to prove it's actually acting as a biological thermostat, and not just acting as an expensive, trendy placebo, we really have to look under the hood. We need to isolate the molecular engine here. What are these secondary metabolites actually made of?
The phytochemistry is incredibly dense. We are looking at over 200 bioactive secondary metabolites inside the root.
200.
Over 200, yeah. But the vast majority of the clinical benefits are driven by a specific group of chemicals called Withania.
Withania. Okay, so what exactly is a withania doing when it hits the human bloodstream?
Well, chemically, Withania are naturally occurring polyoxygenated steroidal lactones, and they are built on a 28-carbon ergostan skeleton.
Okay, wait, stop right there. Polyoxygenated steroidal lactones built on a 28-carbon skeleton is just pure academic jargon.
Yeah.
We need to break that down for someone who hasn't taken organic chemistry in 20 years. Why does that specific structure actually matter to you and me?
Fair enough. Fair enough. It matters because of the word steroidal. In biochemistry, a steroid isn't necessarily just a muscle-building drug that athletes abuse.
Right, which is what everyone thinks of.
Yeah, but a steroid is simply a specific flat arrangement of 4 carbon rings. That's it. Many of your body's most critical hormones, like testosterone, estrogen, and cortisol, are built on this exact same 4-ring steroidal structure.
Oh, interesting. So the plant compound looks like our hormones.
Exactly. Because withanides share this architectural blueprint, they are incredibly lipophilic, meaning they can easily pass right through fatty cell membranes, and they fit perfectly into the receptors in your brain and body that are meant for your own natural hormones. It's like the plant manufactured a master key that just happens to fit the locks in human cells.
That makes perfect sense. So let's look at what happens when that master key enters the lock, specifically regarding stress, because that's what everyone is using it for. Think about what happens to your brain when your boss emails you at like 9 p.m. with a vague, threatening message.
The classic modern stressor.
Yeah. Your brain doesn't know it's just an email on a screen. It perceives a mortal threat, and it activates the body's alarm system.
You're describing the HPA axis, the hypothalamic-pituitary-adrenal axis. The moment you read that email, the amygdala in your brain flags a threat. It then signals the hypothalamus to release a hormone called CRH.
Okay, so that's step one.
Right, and then that CRH travels a tiny distance to the pituitary gland, which then releases ACTH.
Step two.
Exactly. And that ACTH hormone travels all the way down to your adrenal glands, which sit right on top of your kidneys, and it signals them to flood your bloodstream with cortisol.
And cortisol is highly effective if you actually need to sprint away from a physical predator, right, like a tiger.
Yeah.
Because it dumps glucose into the blood for instant energy, it shuts down your digestive system, and it even pauses your immune system so that all your bodily resources go toward immediate survival.
It's brilliant for acute survival.
But when you're just sitting on your couch reading an email, marinating in that cortisol is deeply destructive.
It is highly destructive. Chronic cortisol exposure causes massive oxidative stress. It keeps your immune system suppressed, and it actually triggers muscle catabolism.
Meaning it eats your muscles.
Yeah, it literally begins breaking down your own muscle tissue for amino acids because it thinks you're starving or in danger. And this is exactly where the withanalydes intercept the process.
How do they intercept it?
Specific withanalydes, primarily withafferin A and withanolide D, they cross the blood-brain barrier and bind directly to central glucocorticoid receptors in the brain.
Because they have that master key steroidal shape we talked about.
Exactly, because they fit perfectly. By binding to those receptors, they artificially trigger the brain's negative feedback loop. They basically send a signal to the hypothalamus saying, hey, we have enough stress hormones circulating. You can shut the alarm system off now.
Wow, so it tricks the brain into calming down.
Yes. Clinical studies show this mechanism can directly suppress cortisol secretion by up to 25%. It forcibly stops the cascade of stress hormones right at the source.
That is massive, 25% less cortisol just from a plant extract.
It is, but that's only addressing the hormonal side of stress. The withanalydes also target the actual neural circuitry of anxiety.
The electrical signaling in the brain, how do they alter that?
They modulate GABAergic and serotonergic signaling. So GABA is the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter in the human brain. Its entire job is to tell neurons to stop overfiring, to calm the electrical storms down.
The brain's brakes, essentially.
Exactly. Research shows that fractions of the ashwagandha root extract directly mimic GABA. They bind to the exact same GABA receptors on the surface of your neurons, and when they bind, they act like a gatekeeper, opening tiny channels that allow chloride ions, which carry a negative electrical charge, to flood into the interior of the neuron.
Let me make sure I'm visualizing that correctly. If you are flooding a neuron with negatively charged chloride ions, you are essentially cooling the cell down electrically.
Right.
It's like installing a biological surge protector in your brain. You are raising the threshold of excitability so that tiny everyday annoyances like, someone cutting you off in traffic, a loud noise, a frustrating email, they don't trigger a massive electrical panic response.
That surge protector concept is the perfect way to understand hyperpolarization. Think of a neuron like a tightly coiled spring just waiting to snap. If a threat appears, the spring snaps, and a panic signal is fired.
I'm going with you.
When those negatively charged chloride ions flood in, it's like hanging heavy weights on that spring. It makes it significantly harder for the spring to snap. It physically stabilizes the electrical excitability in the brain's cortex and the amygdala, which is the fear center.
And that hyperpolarization of the amygdala is what actually translates into the subjective feeling of reduced anxiety for the person taking it.
You nailed it. That's exactly it.
So the molecular engine is really working on two distinct fronts here. It's shutting down the cortisol factory at the adrenal level, and it's hanging heavy weights on the anxiety springs in the brain.
Two-pronged approach.
The mechanism is elegant. But, mechanisms in a petri dish don't always translate to living, breathing humans.
Yeah.
Let's look at the actual clinical evidence. What happens when chronically stressed people take this route?
The human data is staggering, honestly. The most compelling evidence comes from a massive dose-response meta-analysis published spanning 2025 and 2026. They pooled data from 22 randomized controlled trials.
Which is the absolute gold standard of clinical research.
The highest standard, yes. And it involved almost 1,400 participants.
Okay, so what were the actual metrics? How much did the stress drop in these people?
The reductions were highly statistically significant. For stress, they recorded a standardized mean difference, or SMD, of -5.88. For anxiety, the SMD was -6.87.
Okay, we need to explain what an SMD of -6 means, because to a layman, that just sounds like a random number. Like, what is -6? In statistics, an SMD measures the effect size relative to the variability in the study. So an SMD of 0.2 is considered a small effect. An SMD of zero point 0.8 is considered a large, highly noticeable effect.
Right.
So an SMD of nearly -6 is an absolute tectonic shift in a clinical rating scale. It means the people taking ashwagandha were practically in a different psychological universe compared to the placebo group.
It is a profound shift in lived experience. I mean, earlier meta-analyses, like the Ayurvedic study in 2022, which looked at 1,000 adults across 12 RCTs, found similar significant reductions. But the newer data revealed something critical about the dosing.
Which is?
It's not a linear response. You can't just take a massive handful of pills and expect zero stress. More is not always better.
So what is the optimal dose-response curve? Where is the clinical sweet spot for you to actually see these benefits?
For generalized stress reduction, the data shows the optimal dose sits right between 300 milligrams and 600 milligrams per day of a high-quality dry root extract. Now, for acute anxiety, the benefits actually continued to scale favorably even at higher doses, equivalent to up to 12,000 milligrams a day of raw root powder.
12,000 milligrams, that's a lot of powder.
It is, and that's for acute severe anxiety. But for daily sustainable cortisol management using a standard extract, that 300 to 600 milligram window is definitely the clinical sweet spot.
There was one specific study in your notes that caught my attention because it measured a highly relatable side effect of stress. The Florida study, it didn't just measure cortisol, it actually measured food cravings.
Oh, the Florida study is a fascinating look at behavioral endocrinology. Researchers took 60 highly stressed adults and gave them either 225 milligrams or 400 milligrams of a patented extract called Ashwagandha for 30 days.
And what happened?
Well, as expected, their salivary cortisol dropped, and their self-reported depression and stress scores improved significantly. But the researchers also used standardized questionnaires to track eating habits, and they found a massive, measurable reduction in food craving.
I mean, think about the physiology of stress eating. When you are genuinely stressed, you do not crave steamed broccoli or a salad. You crave simple carbohydrates. You crave sugar.
Yep. Ice cream, chips.
Exactly. And that is not a failure of your personal willpower. It is a physiological demand. Your brain is telling your body that you are in mortal danger and you need rapid, readily available ATP energy to survive. And sugar provides that instant energy.
That's biology working as intended.
Right. So by stabilizing the cortisol at the root level, the ashwagandha is inadvertently acting as a willpower supplement.
It really is. It intercepts that false starvation alarm. When cortisol is chronically elevated, it constantly signals the liver to release glucose. That leads to insulin spikes, which leads to blood sugar crashes, which drives those intense cravings.
It's a vicious cycle.
Exactly. By restoring that HPA axis negative feedback loop we talked about earlier, you prevent the panic signal from ever reaching the metabolic system. You break the physiological chain reaction that causes stress eating in the first place.
Which naturally brings us to the next massive physiological domino. If your brain is no longer marinating in cortisol during the day and you aren't spiking your blood sugar with stress cravings in the evening, the obvious consequence is what happens to your body when you turn the lights out.
Sleep, yes. The failure of the brain to clear cortisol during the day directly destroys your sleep architecture at night. Cortisol and melatonin exist on an inverse seesaw.
Meaning if one is up, the other has to be down.
Exactly. If cortisol is elevated at 10 p.m., melatonin physically cannot rise. This makes ashwagandha an incredible sleep architect. A meta-analysis of 5 RCTs encompassing 400 participants showed a significant overall improvement in sleep, with an SMD of narrow 0.59.
But who is this actually benefiting? Because there's a big difference between a biohacker who wants to optimize an already good night of sleep and a chronic insomniac who is just staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m.
The subgroup analysis provides a really clear answer there. For healthy individuals just looking for a slight edge in sleep quality, the benefit is present. They saw an SMD of narrow 0.63.
Okay, decent.
But for people clinically diagnosed with severe insomnia, the benefits are far more pronounced, showing an SMD of narrow 0.84.
Wow, so the worse your sleep is, the better it works.
Basically, yeah. The more degraded your sleep architecture is, the harder the plant works to restore it.
How long does it actually take to work, though? Because if someone's listening to this and they buy a bottle, take it at 9 p.m. expecting it to act like Ambien, they're going to be disappointed, right?
Yeah. Oh, incredibly disappointed. It is absolutely not a sedative in the pharmaceutical sense. It does not force you into unconsciousness. It rehabilitates your circadian rhythm gradually.
So it takes time.
Yes. The data indicates that to see optimal sleep benefits, you need a dose of at least 600 milligrams a day, and you must take it consistently for at least 8 weeks.
8 weeks. Okay, that's a commitment. But what specific parameters of sleep are actually improving once it kicks in?
Researchers noted improvements across the board. They saw a significant reduction in SOL sleep onset latency, which is just the total time it takes you to transition from wakefulness to sleep.
Falling asleep faster, check.
They saw increased total sleep time. They saw a sharp decrease in wake time after sleep onset, meaning those frustrating micro-awakenings in the middle of the night stopped. And crucially, participants reported vastly improved mental alertness upon waking.
That morning alertness is kind of the holy grail, isn't it? Because traditional pharmaceutical sleep aids almost universally cause a morning hangover effect where you just feel groggy till noon.
Right, the classic sleep aid hangover.
But I do want to challenge the science here for a second. You pointed out a critical methodological flaw in how a lot of these sleep studies are conducted regarding ashwagandha.
Yes, I did. As rigorous as we want to be, we have to acknowledge the limitations in the current literature. A significant portion of these ashwagandha sleep trials rely on a measurement tool called actigraphy.
And what does that look like?
Actigraphy typically involves the participant wearing a sophisticated wrist monitor that measures physical movement, and then it infers sleep states based on immobility.
Which, I'm sorry, is a terrible proxy for sleep.
It has major blind spots.
Relying on wrist movement to measure the complex neurological phases of sleep is like judging the quality of a restaurant solely by how quiet it is inside. If you're lying perfectly still in bed, completely paralyzed by racing, anxious thoughts, the actigraphy watch is going to log that as deep, restorative sleep simply because you aren't moving your arm.
That is a brilliant analogy, honestly. Actigraphy is entirely blind to brain activity. The gold standard for sleep research is polysomnography, or PSG.
And PSG actually measures the brain.
Right. PSG uses electrodes to measure actual EEG brainwaves, eye movement, and muscle tone. While the subjective sleep quality scales in these ashwagandha studies, where the patients fill out surveys saying they feel vastly better, are overwhelmingly positive, the actigraphy data is weak.
Because it's just guessing based on motion.
Exactly. We need larger, rigorous PSG trials to map out exactly how ashwagandha alters macrostructural sleep architecture. We need to know if it's explicitly increasing the duration of REM sleep or the N3 deep slow wave sleep phases.
The subjective data strongly suggests it is doing that, but we just need the hard brainwave data to confirm it. Regardless, if your sleep quality is improving and your daytime cortisol is plummeting, your body naturally enters a prime state for physical recovery.
Oh, absolutely.
And that brings us to the gym. The sports medicine data on ashwagandha is genuinely wild. Let's start with cardiorespiratory fitness.
The ergogenic, meaning performance-enhancing benefits, are incredibly well documented. Meta-analyses consistently show that ashwagandha supplementation significantly elevates VO2 max.
And for the listener, VO2 max is the maximum volume of oxygen your body can physically utilize during intense, exhaustive exercise. It is essentially the ultimate metric of cardiovascular fitness.
Right. And the data reveals an average elevation in VO2 max of 4.09 milliliters per kilogram per minute.
That's a huge jump.
It is. And importantly, this wasn't just observed in untrained, sedentary individuals who, naturally see rapid improvements when they just start exercising. This 4-point jump was observed in elite, highly conditioned athletes, including competitive cyclists and professional hockey players.
How is a root increasing oxygen utilization? That almost sounds like magic.
The mechanism appears to be linked to improved endothelial function. The endothelium is the inner lining of your blood vessels. Ashwagandha promotes the release of nitric oxide, which causes vasodilation.
Widening the blood vessels.
Exactly, widening the blood vessels and allowing for greater blood flow. Furthermore, some studies show it actually increases red blood cell counts and hemoglobin levels, physically giving the blood a higher oxygen-carrying capacity.
Okay, so cardiovascular output goes up. I buy that. But the study I really want to challenge you on is the strength and hypertrophy data. There was a famous 12-week study looking at bench press strength.
Yes, that is a landmark study in the sports nutrition world. It was a 12-week trial pairing a standardized resistance training program with 300 milligrams of ashwagandha root extract taken twice a day. The placebo group, executing the exact same weightlifting protocol, increased their 1-rep max on the bench press by an average of 26.4 kilograms.
Which is almost 60 pounds in 12 weeks. I mean, that means these had to be relatively untrained novices experiencing what we call newbie gains. An advanced lifter does not put 60 pounds on their bench in 3 months naturally. It just doesn't happen.
That is a completely fair critique of the baseline population, yes. They were young men with limited resistance training experience, but the variable we're measuring is the difference between the groups. The ashwagandha group, under the exact same conditions, increased their bench press by an astonishing 46.0 kilograms.
Wait, hold on. 46 kilograms. That is over 100 pounds added to a bench press in 12 weeks. I really have to push back here. An extra 40 pounds of strength purely from a botanical supplement sounds like the results you would expect from low-dose anabolic steroids.
Did the researchers actually control for variables like daily protein intake or baseline muscle mass?
They did. They controlled for baseline physiological markers and diet. The results are extreme, I admit, but they're consistently replicated across multiple metrics. The ashwagandha group also saw significantly greater muscle size increases in their arms and chest compared to the placebo group. And to your point about steroids, it is critical to note that ashwagandha is not an artificial hormone. It is entirely legal and is not classified as a doping substance by WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency.
Then what is the actual biological mechanism driving that level of muscle growth? If it isn't an exogenous hormone, how does it force the muscle to adapt that quickly?
It all comes down to cellular damage clearance and endogenous hormone optimization.
Okay, walk me through that. When you lift heavy weights, you physically tear muscle fibers, which releases an enzyme called creatine kinase, or CK, into your bloodstream. High CK levels indicate severe acute muscle damage and massive inflammation. The studies show that ashwagandha drastically accelerates the clearance of CK from the blood.
How did it clear it?
By downregulating systemic inflammation. It inhibits pro-inflammatory cytokines like TNF-alpha. When the systemic inflammation is kept in check, the macrophages inside the muscle tissue can efficiently clear out the cellular debris without the body getting bogged down in an overblown immune response.
Ah, I see.
This means the athlete recovers exponentially faster, which allows them to train with higher volume and higher frequency without suffering overtraining syndrome.
So it isn't magically building the muscle for them, it's just widening the recovery window so their body can handle a brutal training stimulus. Exactly. And what about the hormonal side? Because recovery is really only half the equation for hypertrophy.
The hormonal impact is profound. In men, consistent ashwagandha supplementation has been shown to significantly elevate levels of free testosterone, which directly drives protein synthesis and muscle hypertrophy.
But women take this too. What does it do to the female hormonal profile?
It's equally fascinating for women. In clinical trials involving perimenopausal women, ashwagandha was shown to help restore the entire gonadotropic axis. It gently raises serum estradiol levels while simultaneously creating compensatory drops in FSH, follicle-stimulating hormone, and LH luteinizing hormone.
So it balances things out.
Precisely. By smoothing out those erratic hormonal fluctuations, it effectively alleviates many severe climacteric symptoms, like hot flashes, night sweats, and chronic fatigue.
So, to summarize the performance aspect for everyone listening,
Right.
it clears out muscle damage faster, it optimizes free testosterone in men, and it stabilizes the hormonal axis in women. It is basically creating a highly optimized internal physiological environment where the body can adapt to severe physical stress with peak efficiency.
Exactly. It creates profound biological resilience.
All right. If you have stayed with us this far, you have heard about the dramatic drop in anxiety, the restoration of deep sleep, the cardiovascular enhancements, and the staggering gains in muscular strength. At this point, it sounds irresponsible not to take it.
It sounds like a miracle.
Right. You are likely pulling out your phone right now, ready to order a bottle. But the clinical data reveals a massive trap in the supplement industry. Which bottle you buy fundamentally changes the chemical compound you are putting into your body. Let's decode the extract market because this is wild.
Yeah, this is the most vital consumer information of the entire discussion.
Yeah.
If you walk into a store and buy a generic bottle that simply says ashwagandha on the label, you are playing Russian roulette with your neurochemistry.
Russian roulette, that's a strong phrase.
But it's true. You have no idea what part of the plant was used, how it was extracted, or what the concentration of Withania is. The rigorous clinical trials we just discussed do not use random pulverized root dust. They use highly engineered patented extracts that are strictly standardized.
Walk us through the major patented extracts on the market right now. What are the heavy hitters people should look for?
The most dominant and widely researched extract is KSM-66. This extract adheres strictly to traditional Ayurvedic principles because it uses only the root of the plant.
Only the root.
Only the root. It is standardized to contain a minimum of 5% with analytes. Furthermore, KSM-66 uses a unique milk-based or water-based extraction process, completely avoiding harsh chemical solvents like alcohol.
And what is KSM-66 best utilized for? Like, what's the use case?
KSM-66 is the premier choice for broad-spectrum daytime physiological support. If your goal is managing chronic workplace stress, reducing general anxiety, increasing muscle strength, or supporting male fertility and testosterone, KSM-66 is the clinically backed option.
Okay, so KSM-66 is the root-only 5% standard. What is the alternative?
The main alternative is an extract called sensorol. Sensorol is fundamentally different in its botanical makeup because it uses both the root and the leaves of the plant.
Root and leaves.
Right. And by incorporating the leaves, the manufacturers can standardize the extract to a much higher concentration, a minimum of 10% with analyzed glycosides.
How does the inclusion of the leaf change the effect on their listener? Like, what does it feel like compared to KSM?
Functionally, sensoril is significantly more sedative. It exerts a much heavier hyperpolarizing effect on the nervous system. It is specifically suited for people dealing with severe insomnia, chronic joint pain, or states of acute agitated hyperexcitability.
So it's a nighttime thing.
Exactly. You take sensoril when you need to shut the system down. You generally do not want to take it at 8 a.m. right before a high-stakes presentation.
Got it. KSM-66 is for active daytime resilience. Sensoril is for nighttime nervous system sedation. What else is out there?
You also have Shodan. Shodan is a newer, highly purified extract that also uses both the roots and the leaves. However, it undergoes a complex purification process to standardize the active compounds to a massive 35% with analyzed glycosides.
35%, that's huge.
It is extreme. Because of this extreme concentration, it is highly bioavailable and incredibly fast-acting. It is utilized primarily for intercepting acute, sudden cortisol spikes.
Like a panic attack.
Exactly, for immediate relief. Finally, there is an extract called Ashwagandha, which we mentioned earlier in the Florida study. Ashwagandha is specifically engineered to isolate the nootropic cognitive-enhancing compounds of the plant, improving memory, focus, and executive function, while deliberately minimizing the compounds that cause daytime drowsiness.
Okay, I have to stop you here and ask the obvious consumer question. If Shodan contains 35% with analytes, Sensoril has 10%, and KSM-66 only has 5%, why wouldn't the listener just buy Shodan every single time? In the supplement world, we are completely conditioned to believe that a higher concentration is universally better. Isn't 35% just better than 5%?
Absolutely not. And this is where consumers get themselves into serious trouble. A higher percentage of total with analytes almost inevitably requires the inclusion of the plant's leaves. The traditional Ayurvedic practitioners explicitly warned against consuming the leaves for daily tonics, reserving them only for topical applications on skin ulcers or tumors.
Why?
Modern chemistry has proven exactly why they did that. The leaves contain massive concentrations of specific, highly reactive withanoids, most notably withafferin and a compound called withanone.
And what do withafferin and withanone actually do?
Well, in isolated lab settings, they show fascinating cytotoxic anti-cancer properties. They are incredibly aggressive molecules that attack cells.
Wait, they attack cells?
Yes. And for a healthy human taking a daily supplement, you do not want aggressive cytotoxic molecules circulating in your bloodstream. High amounts of these specific leaf compounds drastically alter the safety profile of the supplement and can lead directly to severe toxicity.
Which brings us to the most critical, non-negotiable section of this deep dive, the dark side of the root. We have spent an hour glorifying the mechanisms and the benefits, but it is time to outline the very real, very dangerous side effects. Who should absolutely not be taking this plant?
While ashwagandha is highly tolerable for the vast majority of the population, it possesses a dark side that can cause severe harm to specific demographics. Let's begin with a mild, general side effects that anyone can experience. Even a perfectly healthy individual taking a high-quality extract can experience gastrointestinal distress.
Just from the compounds themselves.
Yeah, the withanolides are potent chemical compounds, and they can physically irritate the mucosal lining of the stomach and intestines. This can lead to nausea, diarrhea, abdominal cramping, and tension headaches. If the dose is too high, it can also induce profound daytime lethargy and apathy.
An upset stomach and feeling groggy is one thing. But you mentioned toxicity from the leaf compounds earlier, specifically withanone. Let's talk about the liver.
Yes, the liver toxicity is a very real, scientifically documented phenomenon known as HILI, herb-induced liver injury. There are extensive case series published by medical boards in Iceland, as well as data from the U.S. Drug-Induced Liver Injury Network, detailing patients who developed severe jaundice, severe liver inflammation, and acute liver injury strictly from consuming over-the-counter ashwagandha supplements.
What is the molecular mechanism of the injury? Like, how does a plant actually damage the liver?
The molecular culprit is that specific compound found heavily in the leaves, withanone. Withanone molecules possess what biochemists call reactive electrophilic groups. Think of an electrophile as a chemical thief. It desperately wants to steal electrons.
Okay, a chemical thief.
Right. When withanone enters your liver's defense system instantly recognizes it as a highly reactive threat.
So the liver has to deploy some sort of defense mechanism to neutralize the thief.
Exactly. The liver deploys its master antioxidant, a molecule called glutathione, or GSH. Glutathione acts as a chemical bodyguard. It willingly donates its own electrons to the withanone, neutralizing the threat before it can damage the liver cells.
So the liver sacrifices glutathione to protect itself.
Exactly. The danger arises when you consume too much ashwagandha, or if you consume a poor quality extract loaded with leaf material, or if your liver is already under stress from alcohol or pharmaceutical medications.
You run out of bodyguards.
Precisely. Your liver's finite reserves of glutathione become completely depleted. Once the glutathione is gone, those reactive withanone electrophiles have nothing stopping them. They begin stealing electrons directly from the proteins and lipids that make up your actual liver cells.
Oh, wow.
And this causes massive oxidative damage, cellular death, and acute toxic hepatitis.
That is genuinely terrifying. So ensuring you purchase a standardized root-only extract like KSM-66 and keeping your daily dose within that 300 to 600 milligram window is entirely about protecting your liver's glutathione reserves.
That is the main goal of dosing properly, yes.
What about other organ systems? How does it interact with, say, the thyroid?
Ashwagandha is a known thyroid stimulator. Clinical trials have demonstrated that it reliably increases the production of thyroxine, or T4 levels, in the blood. If you are a listener with subclinical hypothyroidism and underactive thyroid, this might actually be a beneficial mechanism.
Because it bumps it up.
Right. However, if you are already taking pharmaceutical thyroid medication, such as levothyroxine, introducing ashwagandha can be catastrophic.
Because you're basically stacking two thyroid stimulators on top of each other.
Exactly. The compounding effect can violently push your endocrine system into hyperthyroidism, a dangerously overactive thyroid state. This manifests as severe heart palpitations, resting tachycardia, massive spikes in anxiety, tremors, and uncontrolled weight loss.
That sounds awful.
It is. Furthermore, the physical plant matter can actually bind to the medication in your digestive tract. If you are on thyroid medication, you absolutely must space the ingestion of the drug and the supplement by at least 2 hours to avoid malabsorption, and you really must routinely monitor your TSH levels with an endocrinologist.
Good to know. What about the immune system? We established earlier that Ayurveda used it to build balya, or immune strength.
It is a potent immunostimulant. It significantly increases the activity of natural killer cells and macrophages. For a healthy person during flu season, that's great. But because it aggressively upregulates immune function, it is strictly contraindicated for anyone suffering from an autoimmune disease.
Because in an autoimmune disease, the immune system is already hyperactive and attacking the body's own tissues.
Exactly. If you have systemic lupus, active rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, multiple sclerosis, or if you are a transplant recipient actively taking immunosuppressant drugs to prevent organ rejection, taking ashwagandha is literally like throwing gasoline on a fire.
It just accelerates the attack.
Yes. It will force your immune system to flare up, overwhelming your medications and accelerating the destruction of your own tissues. You must avoid it entirely.
And what are the clinical guidelines regarding pregnancy?
It is strictly and unequivocally forbidden during pregnancy. Ashwagandha possesses known abortifacient properties, meaning the heavy stimulation of the nervous and endocrine systems can induce uterine contractions and trigger a miscarriage.
Wow, okay. Very clear rule there.
Extremely clear. It is also advised against during breastfeeding, simply because there is a complete absence of long-term pharmacological safety data regarding the transfer of withanolides through breast milk to an infant's developing nervous system.
Okay, so let's establish the parameters for safe use. Let's say you are a healthy listener. You have no autoimmune conditions, your thyroid functions perfectly, you are not pregnant, and you just want to utilize a high-quality root extract to manage your corporate stress and improve your physical recovery in the gym. How do you implement this safely over the long term?
The overarching clinical consensus is that you cannot take this indefinitely. You must implement strategic washout periods. The most scientifically supported protocol is to use the supplement continuously for a period of 8 to 12 weeks, followed immediately by a complete cessation of the supplement for 2 to 4 weeks.
So it's essentially crop rotation for your internal biology. Think about traditional agriculture. You cannot plant the exact same crop in the exact same soil year after year.
Right, the soil dies.
Exactly. The crop constantly extracts the exact same specific nutrients from the dirt. Eventually, the soil becomes completely barren, the ecosystem collapses, and the crops die. You have to rotate the crops or leave the field fallow to let the nitrogen and the nutrients return to the earth.
That crop rotation analogy perfectly illustrates the pharmacology of receptor downregulation. If you fled your GABA receptors with analytes every single day for a year, your nervous system will adapt. It will downregulate its own natural production of GABA, and it will physically reduce the number of receptors available.
You build a tolerance.
Yes. You build a massive tolerance, the supplement stops working, and when you finally do stop taking it, you experience a massive rebound of anxiety because your body has completely forgotten how to calm itself down.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
The washout period prevents this. It allows your neurological receptors to reset, and crucially, it gives your liver time to completely regenerate its glutathione reserves.
So the rest period is quite literally just as important as the dosing period.
Absolutely. And as a final safeguard, if you are choosing to run continuous high doses, anything exceeding 600 milligrams a day for extended athletic or stress protocols, you should proactively take control of your biological data.
Meaning blood work.
Yes. Ask your physician for a basic blood panel every few months. Specifically, tell them you want to check your ALT and AST levels, which are the primary enzymes indicating liver stress, and your TSH levels to ensure your thyroid remains in optimal range.
Okay, we need to pull all of this together because we have traversed an immense amount of scientific and historical territory today. We started by examining the evolutionary biology of a small, stressed shrub surviving in the sun-baked, arid dirt of India, exploring the 3,000-year history of Ayurveda and the pungent smell of the horse root known as Rasiana.
And then we lifted the hood on the precise molecular engine, tracking how the steroidal structure of Withania acts as a master key. We mapped exactly how they intercept the HPA axis to forcibly shut down the cortisol alarm, and how they flood the brain's circuitry with chloride ions to hang heavy weights on the springs of anxiety.
We analyzed the staggering clinical data from the latest meta-analyses, translating what a massive drop in standard deviations means for the human experience of stress. We looked at how it accidentally acts as a willpower supplement by breaking the physiological panic loop of stress eating, and we explored its ability to restore nocturnal sleep architecture for chronic insomniacs.
We evaluated the aggressive ergogenic benefits, too, breaking down the cellular mechanisms of how it clears out the inflammatory debris of creatine kinase to accelerate muscle recovery, how it optimizes vascular endothelial function for peak VO2 max, and how it fundamentally alters the hormonal axis for both men and women.
And most importantly, we decoded the incredibly treacherous supplement aisle. We separated the root-only KSM-66 from the highly concentrated, leaf-heavy shodan, and we laid out the stark biological realities of the root-stark side. We discussed the reactive electrophiles attacking the liver, the dangers of thyroid hyperstimulation, the risks to autoimmune patients, and the absolute necessity of biologically crop-rotating your supplements with structured washout periods.
It is a profound, incredibly powerful botanical tool, but like any powerful tool, it demands respect, precise application, and a deep understanding of your own internal biology to be used safely and effectively.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. We have just spent the last hour meticulously unpacking how a single ancient root, forced to survive in the harshest deserts on Earth, possesses a chemical complexity that can biologically outperform many single-target modern pharmaceuticals. It manages stress, it rehabilitates sleep, and it accelerates physical recovery, all without the addiction profiles of modern sedatives.
It forces us to ask a much larger question about the history of medicine. If modern, rigorous, double-blind clinical science is only just now in the 2020s, finally isolating and validating the profound molecular pharmacology of this one single Ayurvedic plant.
What else is out there?
Exactly. What other ancient botanical technologies are currently sitting unread in thousands of years of historical texts? What other biological master keys are out there just waiting for a rigorous clinical trial to unlock them?
What else is growing in the dirt that we've arrogantly ignored? Think about the complex chemical warfare happening beneath the soil the next time you look at a weed in your garden. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, respect the power of your own biology, and keep exploring the science of your health.